So how are we announcing the name of the series? Like,
will people know?
So I feel like if we're gonna be referencing it, they won't know yet because these are coming out before. So
yeah, maybe this should be like where
the way we say it.
What are the dates again?
Because it's, so number 1 is on the 7th, which is next week. Yeah, I feel like maybe at the end of this, we'll do like, and a surprise.
Okay.
Like, okay. All right, so a while ago, we went on Snapchat and Instagram and we asked you guys what questions you wanted us to answer. You guys know that since March, we've been working on a documentary series that comes out in February, and we've had a very long journey in the process.
Yeah.
Like very long. So we wanted to get real with you guys, get personal, and answer some of the questions that you guys have had for a while, whether it's on the series or not. By the way, all of these are questions that you guys have submitted, and some of these questions were asked multiple times, so we decided that we would just do ones that were asked quite often. The first one is starting a career in video journalism and advice for women going into media. And then we can go into like our intentions and expectations. So do you want to start out with like how you got into video?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Missouri for journalism for radio, and then I worked at the public radio station in Chicago. And
that's NPR.
Yes, the NPR station there, which was really fun, and I was a producer there too, actually. But then I heard about Newsy and they had job openings, and that was actually how I started with video. So I went there, not really knowing how to do anything at all.
Wait, so does that mean that you never intended when you were in J school to go into video?
Yeah, I never did. I thought I was gonna be radio forever.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wow.
And now I love it, but
that's so funny.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is there's so many jobs in video journalism right now that I feel like if people just want to get into journalism, digital video is like a great way to
get in. Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's funny because I feel like mine is flipped. So I always knew I wanted to go into video, but one of my first jobs was actually in radio. And then when I started working in radio, I fell in love with audio. And I felt like, so I actually ended up producing at CBS Radio. And then I got into like local television, which I realized was not what I wanted to be doing.
I spent a little bit of time in local television too.
Did you really?
Yeah, I interned in college, and not what I wanted to be
it's not the best thing ever.
It's a different style.
It's a different style, and it's for people who like are really, I don't want to say in tune with their community, but it's just like you have to really want to be doing that.
Yeah.
So,
and you have to live for that like daily rush of like, this is my story today and I'm gonna chase it. Which is fun. I do think that can be a really fun thing to do.
Yeah. It just, I didn't want to chase fire trucks and water main breaks anymore.
Right.
So anyway, and then, so then I got from local, and then I like started doing stuff on my own, just like shooting stories that I wanted to shoot, and then got into digital video through Newsy as well. What is your advice for women going into media?
I think my biggest advice is to pick topics and really focus in on them, because I feel like it's the people that have kind of an expertise in a certain place that do the best in this industry.
Yeah.
So whether that be a topic or if it's a medium, like say you're a really good photographer, just dig in on that. Cause I think trying to do everything and not doing any of it great is kind of like the worst case scenario, and same with topics.
I feel like we both did that throughout this, like the past year. So like for finding like a solid beat and finding out what you're best at, takes, I think, like trial and error, and we like got to experiment with a lot of like, I think, different avenues. So like whether it was you realizing that like you're really good at producing this year, and both of us actually finding a beat. So I feel like the last meeting that we had pitching news stories was when we realized, okay, I think we have a beat.
Yeah, and it's like once you find what works, you should just dig in on it.
Yeah, to just kind of focus on like women going into media. I think that go into it with the mentality that you have an advantage and not a disadvantage. Statistically speaking, women are underrepresented in the media, but use that to your advantage. So go into like pitch meetings or job interviews using who you are and your identity as why you will do better at telling the story. The entire past year, we've been covering the sex trade, and the sex trade heavily is focused on underprivileged women and marginalized women. And so we were able to go into that series as women, knowing what women go through and realizing what the best way to tell the story was. And whether that means like you're a person of color or you're a woman or you're part of the LGBT community, any type of like, whatever I feel like society kind of deems as your weakness or what makes you vulnerable, use that as a strength in the stories that you're telling, because no one will be able to tell that better than you. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for like what you want and know your worth. I think that like women, especially in media, when it's like a very, oftentimes a bro-y culture. We're lucky because like our workplace, I don't feel like is a bro-y culture, but I've definitely been in newsrooms where it is a bro-y culture. And if that's what you're going into, don't be afraid to speak up. If you hear like sexist remarks, or if you hear like inappropriate jokes or things that make you uncomfortable, or if you feel like you're not getting paid, the best time to do that is now with everything that's going on. So yeah, I feel like just like don't be afraid and just go after what you really want.
And I think it's okay, both of us have done a pretty good job of drawing a line on stories.
Yeah.
Like, there are certain types of stories that we're not okay with doing. I feel like especially for you with your identity, it's like, you don't want to be just like the poster girl, like a Muslim journalist. And I feel like women can get kind of holed into certain topics as well.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like both of us have always pushed to do really serious stories and really not fit the stereotypes of what women usually cover.
So then for you, how did that feel producing Off the Trail, which was so heavily like not only male dominated, but white male dominated? So she produced a series that was on climate change and the environment in the Midwest. And how did it feel being a woman on that team and just like being like telling those stories that had a lack of women representation?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I feel like it was more deliberate for me on the producer end to try to get just somebody that was not a white dude, because we just had so many rural people and we talked to a lot of farmers, which just are mostly white dudes. So
except for Anne.
But I feel like,
job.
Yeah, which we have found out. They're underrepresented, but they're there.
They're there.
With Revolt, it was interesting because it's not like I wasn't representing parts of my identity, because I am from the Midwest. So I feel like instead it was just showing a different group of people that aren't usually talked to in media.
Yeah, but I also remember, like, so there have been times where behind the scenes, and this is stuff that you guys will never see, where I've heard you specifically say, like, or acknowledge, like, lack of representation, or making sure we have, like, I don't want to say, like, woke guys, but, like, people who are kind of in tune with not making those jokes. I'm specifically talking about like how we have like a night shoot that's coming up and we need security for it, and when we were on the phone, she specifically like got on the phone with the security people and we're like, okay, we're covering a very sensitive topic on like, this is for sex work. You literally said something and I was just like, oh my gosh, like if it was a guy producer on this, like that would have never been talked about.
Yeah, I asked them to make sure that we had people with us who could handle a sensitive topic like that.
Yeah.
And specifically said, you know, it's gonna be sex work, the sex trade, so we need to be able to report on that without having people making it an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was hard. That's not easy to ask for. Especially it's hard when we're so much younger than a lot of people we work with. Like that was overall kind of a difficult situation, but I feel like it was necessary, so.
No, it was. We have like a really great team, so we're really lucky. What were your intentions of going into journalism and expectations to reality?
I feel like both of us were drawn to journalism for really similar reasons, because we both really care about telling the stories of people who don't usually get to tell their stories. Yeah. So those are my expectations, and I feel like if you kind of stay true to that mission, then you'll do great work. My
expectation, like from when I was like a kid, was literally that I just thought I was like, I had a good knack for like asking questions and telling stories, and I was like, this is what I'm good at and it's fun, I'm just gonna go and tell whatever stories I want. And then the reality was, when I got into it, I feel like I noticed a lot of flaws in every newsroom that I was, and so I realized my responsibility wasn't only telling stories. And I had that experience like when I was in radio, and I remember one time they were covering a story on like a Muslim issue, and they covered it in the most offensive way, and they had 1 million listeners, and I was just like, 1 million people are hearing something that isn't true and is super offensive and puts communities in danger. People have like ill feelings towards the media. I think people think that it's intentional all the time, and I don't think that is intentional. I think that we live in like, the workplace is super fast paced, that people aren't asking the question, how is this story going to negatively impact the community that we're talking about? Or how does this put people in danger? Like, how is it going to affect people? Instead of asking that question, they just tell like the story with a sexy headline without thinking, oh my gosh, this could hurt people.
Which is such a problem in the sex trade especially.
Yeah.
Like this issue, I feel like we've heard from so many people that the media just does a terrible job covering it. So
yeah,
like whether it's the trafficking sign, you see all the images of someone in chains, and it's like, that's really not what it's like when someone's being trafficked.
And this isn't even like, it's not even just local news. Like we saw that with network news organizations doing that. And it's also like, I feel like since we've been working on this since March, we've also realized that the only way that you'll be able to properly tell the story is if you actually take the time. Granted, we took a lot more time because we have a smaller team, but if you have to like take time to really be in with that community and understand it to figure out what's the best way to tell this story. And if people are covering a story this massive in like a week or two, you're going to barely even touch the surface and oftentimes do harm. And when you do harm that way, you end up wrongly telling the story and making it harder for future journalists to build trust in those communities because they already don't like the media because of the coverage, which is something that we've dealt with a lot in the series.
I feel like in general, journalists have such a responsibility to understand people and communities, and a lot of times newsrooms just don't have the time. So yeah, we're just really lucky that we were given the opportunity to really understand this.
Yeah.
Is awesome. Couldn't say like more about Scripps being great just for letting us do this. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously you guys know that we are doing this series, this little video series, because we wanted to do it leading up to the documentary series. Which we keep referring to it as the documentary series, and we haven't announced the actual name. So if you are watching this video right now, we're gonna say it. We're gonna mention the name because in the next videos we want to be able to continue referring to it without it being like super shady and stuff. So drum roll. Okay. Sold in America. Oh my gosh. So the documentary series is called Sold in America, and it comes out early February, and you guys will see the trailer soon. And this is going to be a 5-part video series answering all of your dying questions. So thanks guys for watching.
Thanks for sending us all the questions.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Make sure you guys subscribe, follow me, and follow Kate. Her social stuff will be below, and stay tuned for the actual series. Bye!
Hey friends, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, and of course subscribe. And don't forget to hit me up on Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. See you guys on the next one.